Story 1. Frozen Dahlia. A cold wind scraped my chin as I was walking down the street, blue and green neon light so bright. I've never noted it before how so many cafes and diners had put out their tantalizing signs to allure clueless customers that are walking around searching for something to distract them from their loneliness and boredom. I hate to admit that I am one of those pathetic losers. But lately I have been lonely. I was once in love with the most caring and loving guy. But the only thing left of this relationship are memories of our sweet time together. It was ecstasy to spend time with him. I was feeling elevated every time he was around me. His presence alone sufficed for me to not feel my cheeks anymore. I was drunk on love for months, and then he ghosted me. I didn't understand it at the time. I thought that he loved me. But one day, just out of nowhere, he was done just like that. He had enough. It had never made any sense to me. I don't even remember the next few days after Aaron broke it off via this stupid and disgraceful way. I have never treated a person like the not even a friend or an acquaintance that might have been bothering me and would have totally deserved it to be blocked, let alone a love partner. So now I am wandering around just like the race, of them, miserable and pitiful. Usually I go to this park where pigeons have claimed their territory. It scares me to approach them, but I like one bench there that is not very comfortable, but I appreciate the nuance. I feed them. That is, if they permit to be fed, and then I think for a few hours about our time together. Aaron hated pigeons. If you're asking what kind, a person hates brilliant, bitsy birdies, which have served us for many, many centuries as lawful little messengers, then you haven't read anything above ... The cold is undeniable. I feel my toesies freeze, my heart skip a beat, not because I feel excited, but because I feel half dead. So many thoughts wriggle and twitch in my head that you can see my jerk, yet so empty inside. ISW. Here to you it was a box. No, it wasn't. It was just some dirt, or a dead fish, screamed some child running past me with his pal. Two pigeons flapped their wings and looked indignantly at the boys, but the others didn't notice any disruption. Why did you have to tell though your mom will never let us go near that lake until it thaws? Nitrogen monoxide. We'll have to wait till spring. Idiot. And they were gone, out of my sight. I spent the rest of the evening at the park trying to play with pigeons, but they wouldn't let me. And I went home. Of course, home is a strong word. It's just a room that I rent from a guy who I saw once yell at an owner of a lounge that was just about to put out a bright cyan neon sign. I felt him. I think he was lonely too. And the lights always shone directly. Your heart, lighting up for the whole world to see how poor and bare it is. I didn't judge him, and he gave me a place to stay for a few days. Have I mentioned that this town W as the last place where Aaron and I spent a weekend away together? It was wonderful. Of course, I still remember his arms around me, him standing behind and embracing me. I felt so safe, so seen, so whole. But now it's gone. It's been a few months already since I last saw him, but it just doesn't get any better. I feel the hurt, I feel the cutting pain. I hear voices in my head that call me fucking stupid, and then nothing. I am so dull. I wear boredom as a perfume. It spreads around me, and people are getting infected. But why should I care? I am tired anyway. The next day there is no sun. I wake up to no sunshine. There is nothing but gray sky. I put on clothes and go somewhere. The important thing is that I go and don't sit around at one place too long, because then I get crazy. Fine. Felix, I bet you $50 that there's jewelry inside, said a male voice in a cafe nearby. What a ridiculous notion. It's not a treasure that you find in an adventure book. It's just stuff frozen. But I'm okay with your bet. It is your money. I am not losing it, though, so I don't get your tone. Yes, you are, and yes, you do. This particular cafe didn't have any neon signs boring into my face, so I decided to stay and take a cup of coffee. Excuse me, I have heard you guys talk about some kind of treasure a few minutes ago. I really don't mean to bother, but what are you talking about? I said, hoping for entertainment. That's not a treasure. It's... Yes, it is. Miss, you are right. You have heard us correctly. Come on, man, don't make up. I'm not. Don't listen to him. He looked appraisingly at me. Dahlia? I let him know. Dahlia. Beautiful name. As I was saying, a few kids have found something under the ice at the Grim. A lake while they were ice skating or whatever. Some of us went to check it out. It's a bit hard to determine and tell for sure what is underneath this thick layer of ice. But I think, why, Kramer, we got what you think. Everyone got it, Dahlia. It's probably nothing, but it has piqued our community's interest, and tomorrow some of us is an understatement. 86 people will go to the lake tomorrow at dawn to exude the mystery. Object. I looked at them, and for the first time in months I felt a croaking of my lip. Or was it a curling? No way. Was I? Smiling, I thanked them for sharing that with me, drank the rest of my coffee, and went back to my place. I was looking for my box of tools, of course. It wasn't really mine. It belonged to Aaron. But who knows where he is now, and this is the least that I get to keep out of this relationship. I do think that I deserve more than just a box of freaking hammers and screwdrivers, but a win is a win. I collected everything that I could carry with me and went on my way to the Grimer Lake. I didn't want ruthless villagers to find the treasure. No, I wanted to be the one who finds each chest and finally leaves with fortune. The wind was still whistling, but I didn't mind the cold as much anymore. As I was leaving my building, I had almost slipped and fell, because the roads were almost completely glazed with ice. People around me looked so blue, shivering and trembling, but I was not cold. I had a purpose. Plus, suddenly, so many memories of Aaron flushed back into my mind, where he would play his guitar for me, singing a croaked but sweet version of 21 Guns by Green Day, his arms so long and strong, his hands warm and big. One time a string burst out of the mentioned guitar, and it got his eye along with his ring finger. There wasn't much BB blood, but it left a very distinct SS scare. I was walking past the cafe street, and the neon lights were glowing with warm yellow undertone, so unusual for owners and managers to change their settings. I got to the park and saw no pigeons anywhere. Who needs them anyway? About 50 minutes later, I got to the spot. It was glorious, just like in fairy tales. The full moon was shining over the glazed lake. There were no lanterns, but the white snow reflected moonlight, and I saw everything clearly. I determinedly approached the center of the Grimer Lake, where the big round silver sphere was looking back at me, and started digging. I used hammer. I used saw and knives, and my hands hurt so much. But I was getting closer to the treasure chest. I had a feeling that I might know what's inside. I had a feeling I would find my answers to everything as I broke some of the ice. I noticed that some of it started cracking all around me, and suddenly I felt it was so dark, yet so warm. I saw the white light and swam back up to the surface. I felt my body shiver uncontrollably, but thought it was messing with me. ITTT was after all SS, such a warm and in night. I tucked my soaked hair behind my ears and tried to wipe some of the blood off of my hands, because I didn't want the heavenly box to be touched by something impure. And then ITT touched it. I grabbed the chest out of the reddish blue water and put it in front of me. It really was a box, not a dead fish as a kid had thought. I opened it and saw white warm light coming out of it. There it was. I finally found you, and I will never lose you again. I took the severed arm out of the box and kissed his little ring finger. Story 2. Midnight knocks. Just before midnight, at 11:59 p.m., a young couple, Marissa and Jalen Holt, finally climb into bed after their first exhausting week in their new home. Their property sits on a rural stretch of land with -1 acres of empty woodland on both sides, no neighbors, no traffic, no noise. It had seemed peaceful when they bought it, the perfect escape from the city, but at night that silence feels heavier, more watchful. They pulled a blanket over themselves, exchanging one last tired smile. The house creaks in that unfamiliar way new houses do, but they're slowly growing accustomed to the shifting wood and whispering trees. The moment they close their eyes, a knock echoes through the house, a single, deliberate knock, not frantic, not hesitant, just wrong. Both freeze. Marissa opens her eyes first. Jalen's eyes are already on hers. Neither speaks. They both heard it. Another knock, louder, as if someone knows they're awake. Heart hammering. Marissa whispers, "Who could be out here? No one even lives near us. Jalen sits up slowly, jaw tightening. I don't know. He reaches into the drawer beside the bed and pulls out his gun. He tells her, "Stay here." She immediately climbs out of bed and grabs hers too. He turns. "What are you doing?" he whispers harshly. "I'm not staying here alone," she whispers back. "Just go." "I'm scared," he sighs. "Fine. Stay behind me and do exactly what I say." They creep down the hallway, the old wooden floor, complaining under their weight. The house feels colder somehow. The air feels thicker. Halfway to the front door, Jalen stops abruptly. "Wait. What the hell are we doing?" he mutters. "We have cameras." Marissa gasps. She had completely forgotten. They had installed a full surveillance system on move-in day. "Let's check," she says, already reaching for the wall-mounted screen near the living room. She taps the panel with trembling fingers. Cycling to the front porch camera, a uniformed officer stands there, or someone dressed as one. Relief floods her all at once. "Oh my God. It's the police." Jalen's shoulders relax only slightly. "All right, let's see what he wants." He approaches the door cautiously. "Yes, officer. We're right here. He calls through the wood. A calm voice responds. Evening. I'm Officer Santiago. Just doing a welfare check on the couple who live here. Marissa exchanges a confused glance with Jalen. A welfare check at midnight? Jalen asks. Yeah, that's us. Is everything okay? May I come in? The officer asks. His tone is gentle, professional, but something in it feels a bit too small. OTH. Jalen hesitates. Hold on. He peeks at Marissa. She nods, trusting the situation now that a badge is involved. Jalen unlocks the door. The man steps inside quickly, shutting it behind him. He presses a button on his shoulder radio and says, I have them right here in front of me. You can stand down. Then he pockets the radio. Please sit, he says, both of you. The commandness in his voice is jarringly different from his earlier tone. Marissa and Jalen share another glance, uneasy. Sure, Marissa says, lowering her cell phone to the couch. Jalen sits beside her, but never sets his gun down completely. Don't move, the officer says sharply. They freeze. Give me your phone, he orders. Jalen starts to stand and hand it over, but the officer snatches it violently from Marissa, scraping the back of her hand and splitting to nails. She winces. I can get them fixed. Shut up, he snaps. Jalen sits forward instantly. Don, talk to her like that. The officer steps forward aggressively. You want to argue with me right now in this situation? Think very carefully. Jalen clenches his fists. If I wasn't tired right now, he mutters under his breath. What was that? The officer asks, leaning in. Nothing, Jalen says tightly. The officer smiles as if amused, then reaches into his bag. Marissa and Jalen both tense. He pulls out of all things a small, portable speaker, a little JBL-looking thing. He sets it on the table and presses play. Soft, pulsing music fills the room, slow, rhythmic, unsettling. Then, shockingly, the officer begins to undo his shirt. Wide-eye. Marissa blurts out, we don't want to see this. He continues unbothered. Jalen mutters, what is happening right now? The officer slides his shirt off one shoulder. I told you, he says calmly, this is a welfare check. This is not. Marissa starts, but he silences her with a glare. Jalen stands, unable to help himself. Buddy, I swear if you don't stop this, the officer tilts his head. You're tied up. But Jalen looks down. His hands are free. He frowns. We're not tied. You will be, the officer says softly. Eventually, if you keep interrupting. Marissa's voice trembles. What do you want? The man pauses mid-gesture, eyes drifting from one to the other. The music pulses like a heartbeat behind his words. I want, he says slowly, to see how people behave when they're frightened. When everything familiar disappears, when the rules all apart. Jalen takes a step back, positioning himself between the officer and Marissa. Look, man, whatever this is, it needs to stop. Right now, does it? The officer asks, raising one eyebrow. Or is this the first time either of you have felt truly awake in a long time? The air grows suffocating. The music seems louder, though no one touched the speaker. The officer smiles again, but this time it's too natural, too forced. Something inside it feels wrong, almost inhuman. Marissa grabs Jalen's arm. Jalen, something's off. He doesn't respond. His eyes are locked on the man's grin. The officer steps forward, slow and deliberate. You bought a house in the middle of nowhere, he says. No neighbors, no traffic, no witnesses, and you thought nothing would find you here. Jalen's throat goes dry. Find us, what does that mean? The grin flickers into something else hungry, knowing midnight knocks, he says. Our Neve. Our accidents, the lights flicker. The music distorts. Something moves behind the officer, a shadow stretching along the wall that doesn't match his body's shape. Marissa gasps. Jalen tightens his grip on her hand. The officer stands perfectly still, letting the shadow behind him grow. It crawls up the wall like spilled ink. Then, in a voice no police officer would use, he says, welcome to the neighborhood. Story 3, The Revenant, The Revenant. On the deck of a small boat, a solitary human lay unconscious, drifting on the empty sea. The storm had passed. She had survived. Flora awoke suddenly, her mind screaming at her. N-O-O dot dot Stan, N-O-O dot 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 no dot dot dot, and then a scrambled, frantic, useless search for words and instructions. The memory was a cold void. Even if she remembered what she was supposed to do, it would make no difference. She collapsed back onto the deck, bereft. The ship's surface was barren, no mast, no safety rails, no survival pod, no supplies. Everything was gone. Everything except for a sudden shattering of the immense silence, a voice screaming at her. Startled, she roused herself, seeing no one. She -1 a cabin hatch, water sloshed, blocking entry. The interior of the cabin polluted with water and fuel oil. A life jacket floated nearby. She snatched it, pulling it on for warmth more than pay, and climbed back topside. The seas had miraculously settled. The previous hours of raging water were replaced by a flat and settling calm. The last rays of a dying sun mocked her with their beauty. He crawled aft, finding a small sheltering nook in the stripped cockpit, hiding from the voice, now threatening, now intimidating, still attached to nothing. Oh, God, lost, I'm lost. I should just throw myself overboard. Why live with what I've lost? I can't. She fell into desolate sobbing. A chill settled over her, but it was unnatural, not born of wind. The air was dead still. A massive black cloud ahead was unsettling. It owned the horizon, swelling and reaching simultaneously upward into the sky and downward toward the sea. It moved towards her with a slow, deliberate quality that felt intentional, aware. The thought prickled her skin. It knows I'm here. 1.1 It's screaming at me. Why? Again the voice raged out over the ocean. Tulpa, I demand your attention. Flora stiffened. What the hell? She thought, then jumped up and ran forward, yelling into the nothingness of the cloud. What the hell do you want from me? Tune. Her vibrated, slamming into her and driving her back into the cockpit shelter. The cloud was no longer formless. It was a grotesque, menacing shape emanating pure evil. It dropped and stood on the deck, leering, reeking old rot. Flora gagged, turning away. As she turned, she felt the boat was listing. The water in the cabin below deck was rising fast. Sinking, she realized. Not that, too. Lines be drowned, like a rat, like the rat that I am. Frantically, her eyes searched for a float, lighting on the lines draped over the tiller. She tugged. They were tethered to the survival pod FL, floating behind the rudder. Hope. You have no hope. Mortal, a rough, clawed hand grabbed her shoulder and spun her around. She was looking into the soulless eyes of a monster wearing the face of her host, Stan, the man so recently swept overboard. Repulsion warred with agony. "My God, have you no mercy?" she screamed. "Mercy is a diversion," Tulpa the Revenant sneered back. "Divert and lose your soul as well as your life. Look at me," the monster demanded. Flora turned away, refusing its gaze. "I won't look, never. I won't acknowledge your in Strauss mockery of my beloved. I want to remember him the way he was." The Revenant grabbed her again, shaking her violently until she felt she might break. "Look at me. Look at me. It's empty, eye socket." S demanded. "Stop." She thought, the pain shattering her will. "Okay, I'll look at you. I'll look. Just stop hurting me." She turned and faced it. Instantly, the shaking stopped as she forced her gaze into the empty sockets. A vision erupted. Her home, stately and modern. Agony seized her. "My beautiful home, lost. Lost, I'll never see it again. I can't stand this. Stan. Where are you?" "Oh, God, no. This hurts too much. Too damn much. I can't stand it." Next, Stan, her lover, appeared more beautiful than she had ever known him to be, beckoning with familiar tenderness. She followed, and with each opening door of the mansion they had built together, her heart fractured into smaller, sharper shards of agony. They reached their bedroom, the bed, the dressing table, the calm BS and pens Stan had lovingly given her. She collapsed as she looked at the next door, behind which was the blue-tiled mikveh, their sacred space. "Stan, open it. Take me in. Make sweet love to me. Then let me die. Let me out of this hell." Stan did not open the mikveh door. Instead, the scene blurred. She was in the bed, being awakened by him and her sister. She relived the awful day they sent her back to school, the tantrum she threw, her face contorted by angry accusations of betrayal. "Was it me? Did I do this? Was it my anger, my rage, that brought this horror to me? Is this monster not but my own guilt?" Then, violently, she was thrown back onto the boat deck. The boat listed drastically toward starboard. "Am I sinking?" She struggled, desperate to reach the survival pod to escape the monster, but the lines held fast. She needed a knife as she headed toward the hatch. The Revenant grabbed her with renewed ferocity. "You're not done looking. You haven't started seeing." Flora screamed, her terror choking her. "What can you mean? I don't understand." "Oh, God, help me. Look and see," was all the monster offered, forcing herself to look again, hoping to understand what seeing meant. She saw it, her own face, contorted by rage, seen through the eyes of her host. Was that really me? The shock was immense. "I never this huggle." Why? But she knew it was. Was she the betrayer? Had her love disappeared, replaced by anger and fear? Was she bringing this horror down on herself? Confusion overwhelmed her. The boat tilted again, drastical. Why? Plunging her through the open hatch into the foul cabin waters. She thrashed, drowning, until her hand bumped a solid object. She grabbed at it. "It's the dead man's switch. SH. He recalled. Will it work? If it doesn't, I'm dead." She pulled the lever. It was stuck at the end of her entrance. She was growing weak. One final pull, a motor roared to life. Lights on a dashboard panel went on. She pulled herself upwards, exhausted. Finding the open hatch, the boat seemed to be righting itself. She heard the splashing of ejected bilge. The pumps were working. They were not sinking. The night was long, solitary, and cold. She managed to crawl onto the folks' lee bunk, holding on, but tormented by the thought she had let her lovers down, that her anger had inflicted hurt. Some time later, a cold, wet sensation touched her. Terror returned. So had the weather. The wind, again howling, tossed the little boat to and fro, smashing Flora and the bunk with it, bruising her with every move. Finally, a rogue of a wave knocked her out of the bunk and onto the cabin floor. She crawled up, looking around. She went into the ed. The revenant was staring at her from the mirror. Go deeper, little tulpa. Go deeper, confused. Struggling against the storm, she made her way back into the bunk. She heard only a distant laugh as the wind and seas continuously mocked her, rocking the boat, again chipping water, splashing down the hatchway, covering her again with its foul effluvium. Thunder and lightning sundered the heavens, and with a thunderous flash, red lightning blazed into her consciousness. That was when she realized the truth. Rufescent, the Red Witch, her personal childhood demon, was the storm, was her own anger, her vengeance, her imagined slights. It's me I'm torturing. There's no need, I am worthy. Stan, KK, Lily, Loxy, they all loved me. I can do the same. A wave of self-compassion washed over her. Flora, girl, forgive yourself. Outside, the waves magically flattened, and she fell asleep upon settling seas and zephyrous winds. As she slept, she dreamt of her lost lover, Stan, his face now beautiful, not a monstrous revenant, just Stan, calling ... calling ... calling. Flora awoke suddenly, needing to pee. Dragging herself out, she found the gall, white-trashed. She climbed above onto the ruined deck. Dawn broke, its beauty a stark contrast to her grief. Then she heard a hail. First a claxton, then a voice calling. Turning, she saw a boat heading directly toward her. On deck stood Stan, her sister, and the crew of a Coast Guard cutter. Stan was calling her name. The nightmare was over. Story 4. First date. The first thing that really bothered me about James, besides being late to our first date, was the gold crown over his upper left cuspid, which glistened across the table at me, and he sat after we'd shook hands and made our introductions. It was pretty weird. As a dental hygienist, I really only saw those on old people. Then again, I worked in a low-income area for a dentist that charged on a slide-in G scale. So what did I know about the habits of the types of people who show up to a first date in a Porsche, like he'd done just moments prior? He'd made eye contact with me through the window, winked coyly, and strolled into the cafe with the kind of swagger you'd expect from a dude walking away from a sports car he thinks will impress you. But he was about 20 minutes late by that point, mighty 3/4 drunk, and I wasn't inclined to be impressed. Admittedly, he looked even better than his photos on Eros Arrows, the dating app where we'd met, so I pushed away why misgivings, plus I could just hear my girlfriends, all partnered up, telling me I was being too picky, that I had no right to complain about being single if I never gave any guy a chance. Blah, 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 plus he was really cute. I greeted him. We sat, he smiled, and there it was, the tooth. James had 3 photos on his Eros Arrows profile, all 3 were serious and dramatic and resembled an actor's headshots. No smiles, no teeth. When he'd first shot me an arrow, the dating app's messaging system, I almost thought it was a catfish situation. But the photos had no match on a reverse image search, and he did come up on Instagram. Unfortunately, the profile was private, so my sleuthing stopped there, but the number of followers and posts suggested a real guy, and at least none of the 3 photos I'd seen had a fish in them. I was somewhat encouraged. Nonetheless, I arranged to meet in a very public place. James ordered a macchiato and told me about his job, his car, his Rolex. He asked me about my beauty regimen, what stared out the window at his car, while I listed some products I had in a drawer in my bathroom, but didn't actually use. Then the macchiato arrived, and James complained it had too much foam. Then he told me about his recent ski trip and how I reminded him of a beautiful waitress who'd served him a much better macchiato at the lodge in St. Moritz, which, to be perfectly honest, I had thought was an island in the Caribbean. When he used the word Zaperski, it was solidified for me that this was not a good match. By this point, I'd been listening to him drone on for a good 15 minutes, which seemed like enough time, but whenever I started to make an excuse to leave, he started to tell me about his watch collection, or his old coin collection, or his snow globe collection. Of course, the latter led back to his favorite vacation destinations, and it was 20 more minutes of braggadocio before I was able to make my escape. At no point did he mention his gold tooth, though, which was surprising, considering how many words came out of his mouth right past it. I, too polite to interrupt, nodded along and tried not to nod off. In the end, I was saved by a phone call. I wouldn't dream of being so rude as to answer my phone on a date, but what hour? And a phone in his pocket started buzzing. James had no such qualms as he listened to the person on the other end of the line, with the occasional and I see apparently he was capable of listening for a minute. I flagged down a waitress and requested separate bills. No, 1 bill, James proclaimed, snapped the flip phone shut and put it back in his pocket. I laughed. Is that a burner? I hadn't noticed when he'd first answered the call, but his iPhone was sitting on the table next to his offensively foamy macchiato. Oh shit, is this guy a drug dealer? I wondered, and he immediately regretted bringing any attention to his phone. James's face was serious. Work cell, he said, and then flashed his blinding tooth at me again, but his eyes were cold and unsmiling. The waitress came back with the single bill. I reached for it, but he got to it first. You get the next one, he said, but I knew there would be no next time. How about lunch tomorrow? No, I said, way too fast. I'm busy this week, and I hated not being honest with a guy I didn't want to see again, but this dude was really starting to creep me out. I practically ran out the door when the waitress returned to take his money. Then the calls and texts started. He had to see me again. I told him I wasn't interested in a relationship right now. He wouldn't take no for an answer. I told him to leave me alone and blocked his number, but the calls and texts kept coming, a different number every time. I stopped answering calls altogether. A luxury black SUV started showing up outside my apartment building, conspicuous in a neighborhood full of beat-up old trucks and rusted sedans. Not the small blue sports car he'd driven to the cafe he did make. Sure, I knew he had many cars. It even followed me to the police station, where the cop who took my report told me I didn't qualify for a restraining order since James had never committed nor even threatened violence. As I waited for the bus back home, he drove up and offered me a ride, but thankfully kept driving when I didn't move. He started sending me flowers every day to my office or to my apartment. Always roses and always 2 dozen. I started getting a coworker to drive me home, even though I lived just a 10-minute walk from work. For a man who seemed so uninterested in learning anything about me on our first date, he seemed to not be able to get enough once I turned him down. He continued to text and leave voicemails, sounding increasingly desperate as time went on, but always ending his message with "I must have you." One day, about 3 weeks into the ordeal, I woke up to a knock on the door. I'd stop answering knocks, at each one set shudders all over my body. I threw on some clothes and tiptoed to the front door. I peeked through the peephole and saw the back of a man waiting for the elevator. He was wearing brown, like a UPS driver, not the pink visor that marked the flower delivery guy. The elevator opened, he got on, and was gone. I waited a few minutes, I glued to the peephole, before finally opening the door. On my threshold was a box wrapped in black paper, with no name or address or postage on it. The black was so dark it seemed to suck in all the light in the hallway. I felt sick. I closed the door again without touching it, but I couldn't stop wondering what was inside the package. The next morning, it happened again. This time I was sitting on a chair in my kitchen, arms huggy. My knees, I nearly fell over at the loud knocking just a few feet away. I hadn't slept, eaten, or moved, really. The gift was driving me crazy, but I knew nothing good would come of giving in to my curiosity. Silence filled every inch of air in my apartment. Like a toxic miasma, I looked through the peephole again and again. I saw the back of a man in brown get on the elevator and leave. I expected another package, but when I opened the door, it was the same black box sitting on the threshold. Just looking at it made my stomach churn. I thought I would throw up. It was firmly in front of my door, and I couldn't make myself step over or around it. It felt like an impenetrable barrier exuding bad vibes. On the third day, I decided I had to get rid of it. James had started calling, but the box at the front door was my new torment. I'd missed 2 days of work, and enough was enough. I opened the door and nudged the box with my foot, but it didn't move. The thing must have weighed a metric ton. I still could not make my body move over or past it. The wrapping paper was so black my brain couldn't even register the edges of the box. It just looked like a chasm, a black hole threatening to pull in every bit of matter in my being. I went back inside. From the window, I could see his car parked on the road. The lights were off. It looked almost as dark as the box that was making me batty. I had no escape in either direction. I thought about calling the police again, but I knew how unhinged I'd sound. One considered ordering some kind of burglar alarm or booby trap or something, but the last thing I wanted was more delivery guys at the door. The fifth morning after the appearance of the box, I had still not slept. This time, instead of a knock, a voice came from the door. "Come on," he said slowly. It was James's voice, but lower, more gravelly than the one ranting about foam in the cafe. "Just look inside, if you don't like my gift. I won't bother you any more. I wanted to scream, 'Leave me alone.' I wanted to tear open the door and then tear out his throat. But I didn't move a minute. Later, I heard the ding of the elevator. He was gone. I opened the door slowly. With the chain still on, the box wasn't there. I opened the door fully and looked down the hall, but no sign of it. I went back in and breathed a sigh of relief. Maybe he'd got the message, finally. But I knew he hadn't. The nauseous feeling emanating from the box was still there, in my apartment, all around me, inside me even. I frantically began to search for it. I tore apart my closets, threw couch cushions to the floor, furiously searching for the unwanted gift. I was huffing and my face was hot. Maybe it was the lack of sleep, but the whole thing felt like psychological torture, and a not small part of me wondered if I was just truly insane now. And maybe I had imagined the box and James and all of this. Tripped the bed, pillowcases and sheets flew around me. I pulled up the mattress and box spring for good measure, and there it was, under the bed frame. The Vanta black box emanated misery and soaked you. To any remaining light inside of me, I pulled the bed frame away and crouched next to the object I was now fully convinced was evil. It was cool to the touch. I couldn't find any seams in the paper, so I scratched a tear into it with my nail and pulled the paper back. Inside the box was nothing. It wasn't empty. It was full of nothingness. It wasn't even a box. The paper fell to the side, revealing an abyss that pulled at me and grew with every passing moment, until it had engulfed me altogether. I gasped for air, but there was no air to be gasped. I thrashed my bow against the darkness, but I found nothing all around. The ground was gone from under me, and all that remained was the chasm, empty and full of nothing. Centuries later, or hours I had no idea. When light finally began to return, I only saw the tick of my eyelids. For several minutes I was too scared to open them. "It's a dream," I told myself, and forced my eyes to open. A glass window was directly in front of me. I tried to look around, but I couldn't budge. On the other side of the glass, a giant mouth smiled, a hideous, huge mouth with a giant golden tooth. "Did I tell you about my collection?" the mouth said. "This is the one I got in St. Moritz." An enormous hand with French manicured nails reached toward the glass ball that surrounded me, picked it up, and shook it vigorously. But I was able to neither scream nor move. Huge wads of white powder flew up from around my feet and floated back down through what I now realize was water arrow. And me, the hand moved the snow globe in front, its female owner's laughing face, bangle bracelets clanging against the glass. She frowned. "I don't like this one as much," she said, and set me back down on the shelf I'd come from, now facing the full gallery of snow globes that made up James's collection, each with a woman posed inside in front of a ceramic mountain, or building, or palm tree. An even larger hand, adorned with a gold watch to match the gold tooth, grabbed me now and turned me to face him again. As snow fell gently down, I heard him tell his visitor how she reminded him of a flamenco dancer he'd met on a trip to Seville. He didn't have a snow globe from there, but he hoped to add one to his collection soon. Story 5. Forgotten. 3 girls remained in the mess hall, surrounded by half-eaten plates, empty tumblers, and jackets slung over chairs. They've been here the longest. Only 3 girls, not including me. Neve are including me. I had watched since the hall was buzzing with energy, laughter that echoed, feet thumping on the ground. And then they began filing out, like blood rushing through veins. The room itself grown smaller. I sat in the corner, pressing my temple against the cool plaster of the wall. The afternoon sun dragged across the floorboards too bright, too demanding. I kept my heat down. It's been like this lately, a constant, thrumming headache that makes the world feel distant, like I'm watching it through smudge glass. My head has been muddled these days. I forg at small things. The last time I actually sat down for a proper meal. The last time the noise of people didn't feel like needles in my ears. My appetite disappeared first, then everything else followed. Wed, I could faintly recall the names of the girls that remained. I knew Jenna the best. We were good friends once, I think, before the fallout. I can't recall the fight, just the silence that swallowed everything after. We had been inseparable. Late-night noodles, stolen shampoo, laughing until the warden knocked. Funny how memory holds the warmth but forgets how to reach it again. But now Jenna stuck close to Aria and Nella. The 3 of them leaned in over the table, whispering. I shouldn't have cared, but loneliness can make even background noise feel important. I leaned a little closer, just to pretend I was part of something, to hear what kept the girls occupied these days. The hallways are haunted, I'm telling you, Aria whispered, eyes wide. Jenna rolled her eyes, though she didn't look convinced. Everyone's paranoid. Although Chris swore she saw a ghost last night. Said it was wearing flip-flops. They giggled a sharp, nervous sound. Ridiculous. I let out a short, annoying breath. The laughter stopped. All 3 girls whipped their heads toward my corner. They stared right at me. I shrank back, suddenly self-conscious. Ori, I muttered. I didn't mean to. They didn't let me finish. They exchanged a look, whispered things I couldn't hear. Then, quickly, they gathered their things and slipped out of the hall without a single word in my direction. I sat there, stung. My mother always nagged me to walk more, to get my blood moving. So I've been taking long walks at night. Looks like my routine has to change because these girls were making it difficult. Last night I ran into the 3 of them snooping around with a phone flashlight. I didn't want to socialize when my hair was a mess and my eyes felt hollow. I'd actually become the ghost legend. Someone dropped a spoon in the kitchen. The clang echoed too loudly. Even small sounds scratch at my nerves lately. The overhead lights buzzed faintly, flickering in a way that made the shadows pulse. The whole room felt like it was waiting for me to leave first. Eventually I did. I must have drifted off once I reached my room. The sun had vanished when I opened my eyes. Again everything dipped in blue-black shadow. My head was heavier than before. I skipped dinner. I couldn't handle the crowded hall, the way people's conversations swelled and curled without including me. The dark felt gentler. It wasn't until the clock ticked close to midnight that I moved again. I needed to brush my teeth. I hesitated at the door. The bathroom would be busy. Cliques gathered there at night. Gossip central. I didn't want to be the girl hovering awkwardly at the sec while everyone else talked around me. Just go, I told myself. Stop being a coward. Maybe Jenna will be there. Maybe we can fix things. I pulled my shrug tight and stepped out. The hallway felt longer at night, stretching you, naturally, as though the darkness was tugging on both ends. I've been living in these dorms for a long time, but never once had the air felt this heavy, as if Arya's paranoid whispers had paid into the plaster itself. I counted the doors: 12, 13, 14, grounding myself with each number. Lately, I'd been forcing myself to walk lighter. No need to feed their ghost store. I reached the bathroom and flicked on the lights. They buzzed overhead, a little too bright. I leaned against the vanity, trying to rehearse something normal to say. Thump, thump, thump. Footsteps. Rushing. My stomach sank. Not now. I inhaled slowly. Maybe it's Jenna, I thought. Maybe she actually looked at me this time. The footsteps stopped right outside the door. Whispering, I glanced at the clock hanging above the door. A minute past midnight. A soft, hesitant knock. The handle turned. Arya and Jenna step inside, breathless, high-strung, their eyes scanning the room like they expected something monstrous to leap at them. Then Jenna saw me, her gaze locked on mine. It was different than in the mess hall. No dismissal, no annoyance, but her expression didn't soften. It shattered, her face drained of all color, her chest itched, mouth trembling open in pure, raw terror. Like someone stood beside me. Something. Arya followed her gaze. She screamed, a real scream, thin and sharp and ripping from her throat. She grasped Jenna's wrist and yanked her backwards so violently Jenna stumbled. Both of them bolted, shrieking as they sprint down the hallway. Their footsteps echoed long after they were gone. I stood there, frozen, feet like concrete. What is wrong with them? Is this some kind of twisted joke? Did I look that bad? Was I really so unrecognizable now? My pulse thudded in my ears. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I needed to see, needed to check behind me even though I didn't want to. Slowly, fear clawing through me, I turned. I saw the white tiles, the taps, the shower curtains shifting slightly from the draft. No ghost, nothing, just the mirror. And no one standing in it but the empty room behind me. Story 6. An unwelcome guest. To say the Sawtooth Mountains of Minnesota were cold was an understatement. No, they were heartless and frigid. It wasn't often I had enough time off work to enjoy my hobbies. This weekend, me and the boys from work at the brewery were going to the mountains. Iron Creek Trail was certainly no easy trek in the dead of winter, but it had been our tradition for nearly 3 years. When Friday afternoon rolled around, I ducked out of work early to find Earl and Chuck already waiting for me at my truck. Slung across their backs were a set of heavy pack KS and a rifle each. The grin on my face spread ear to ear as I hopped into the truck. You ready, boys? Chuck had a sad look on his face as he nodded. You know it. Rel whooped and hollered as he clambered into the back seat. We gonna bag us a cougar for certain this year. Chuck shook his head slightly as he tossed his stuff into the back and joined me in the front seat. What you gonna do with a whole-ass cougar, Earl? You don't got room in that tiny house of yours to fit a taxidermy like that. Not with all them kids, mountain bikes, and shit. Earl's good mood was unshaken. Hell if I know. Maybe I'll cook it up and eat the thing. Never tried cougar meat before. I grimaced. You've lived here long enough to know there aren't any cougars in those mountains. Haven't been for at least 100 years. You'll be lucky to catch a bobcat. We continued to chatter on the winding drive up to the mountains. We only hiked a mile or two before setting up camp. We didn't want to be out gallivanting around the freezing wilderness. In the middle of the night, Earl popped open a can of beer and began to chug. With a belch he exclaimed, "That new manager is something else. Thank God we're finally out on this trip. I needed a chance to relax and shoot something." I cleared my throat. "That's not really the reason we come out here, you know." Chuck's eyes remained glued to the fire, not willing to contribute to the conversation. Earl continued, "Anyway, that buck last year was really something, wasn't it?" I popped my own can open. "Yup, sure do. Still got the thing's head mounted above my fireplace." Chuck sighed. "The wife must love that." I sipped my beer and not a day could be worse. "She isn't exactly thrilled, but she lets me keep it." Earl huffed. "Better than my wife. Damn woman has me on a ball and chain lately. Can you pick up the kids from school? It's your turn to take out the trash. Why are you following on Life's models? You flirting with the neighbor's wife again?" Earl, "I don't know, man. Those sound like fair complaints." Without so much as a goodbye, Chuck was already retreating to his tent. As he zipped it harshly behind him, Earl called, "See you in the morning, Sorbus." I elbowed Earl. "Come on, you gotta be nicer to the man. He's still processing shit." Earl complained, "It's been 3 years, Jimmy. He should already be moved on. It's no excuse to ruin our trip." I frustratedly fidgeted with the pop tab on my can and replied, "He has every excuse to ruin our trip. He's why we go on the damn thing." Earl exclaimed, "Not anymore. 3 years, man." The pop tab broke off my beer, sent flying somewhere into the snowy woods. I shook my head. "I'm going to beat Earl. Put the fire out when you're done drinking." He didn't reply to me as I returned to my tent, watching the fire flicker ominously through the sheer fabric. No amount of bundled clothes made it warm enough to sleep comfortably. The chill of the night air radiated deep into my core. The only thing that lulled me to sleep was the awful ache in my bones. Last night's hostilities seemed to be mostly forgotten in the bright light of day. The sun reflecting off the thin layer of newly fallen snow was practically blinding. Light conversation was made as we cooked some eggs on the fire and disassembled last night's camp. It was another 8 miles to our next designated camping spot, so we planned to leave early as possible. It was a gorgeous hike up to our favorite lake. Spires of snow-covered rock were scattered red amongst towering pine and spruce trees. The occasionally falling needles of the deciduous trees were still a deep green shade, contrasting with the rest of comparatively barren surroundings. We kept track of the trail using the small stream that ran beside it. Parts of it were frozen over, while others were a slush of ice and water. Every so often there was chatter of an interested squirrel or a noisy bird as we disrupted their home. Our boisterous talk and clomping footsteps were an unwelcome guest amongst the local wildlife, almost as if they knew we didn't belong there, like they knew humanity had forced its way into an environment that did not want it. The sun had begun to lower in the sky, turning the crystal snow a beautiful ombre of oranges and pinks. It was difficult work restringing our tents and collecting firewood in the bitter wind. I shone my flashlight through the dense trees, searching for fallen logs. Suddenly a flash caught my eye from the Arby stream. It was completely frozen over, as this part of the mountain had yet to see sun in a very long time. Even with the ice, I could tell that this section was far deeper than the rest, most likely due to its proximity to the mouth of the lake. When I shone my flashlight on it again, something caught the light from beneath the icy sheet. I crept closer, squatting down to peer into the ice. Some sort of metal was just beneath the cloudy surface. I called the other men over, pointing out the odd sheen. We stared at it in confusion before Earl mused, "I think it's a watch, you guys." Chuck shrugged. "Could be a compass." I peered at the ever-darkening sky. "Let's dig it out tomorrow. See what's under there." Earl frowned. "I can't wait that long. Not knowing is gonna kill me." He examined the thing even closer. "What if it's a Rolex? Look at it. Looks like a Rolex Explorer, if I've ever seen one. Do you know how much those things are? Worth? There could be 10 grand frozen in that river." I squinted, making out what definitely could be a watch face, maybe only an inch beneath the ice. Chuck rolled his eyes. "You'll catch your death out here in the cold before you see a lick of that money." "Let's find out in the morning." Snow had already begun to fall by the time we'd piled the firewood together, making the damp wood far harder to light. Many beers deep, and all Earl could focus on was the mysterious watch. Chuck and I humored him for as long as we could. Lucky for us, the snow put the fire out soon enough, and we all retired to our tents. As I drifted to sleep, the wind began to howl, a howl I never heard the wind make before. I chalked it up to a mixture of alcohol and sleep-deprived hallucination. It wasn't long before sleep took me from the waking world, clouded no longer by the worries in my head. The next morning was far less pleasant than our prior awakening on the mountain. I was awoken by a loud banging, as though someone was knocking a rock against a tree. Earl was about to get a talking to for whatever prank he had pulled that had so rudely awakened me. I shivered, attempting and failing to pull my sleeping bag closer. Perhaps if I were to get up and move about, that would warm me up. As I unzipped my tent, a massive clump of snow tumbled in. I shuffled out of the tent only to find the snow nearly up to my waist. I shouted for the others. "Earl, was that you out here banging on shit?" Earl groaned, sticking his head out of his tent. "What the fuck are you talking about? What time is it?" I checked the cheap watch on my wrist. "It's nearly noon, idiot. Get up and stop fucking around." Trying to scare the daylights out of Chuck and I as a dick move, Earl crawled out of his tent, pale and worse for wear. "I don't know what you're talking about, man. I just woke up. I wasn't banging on anything." He peered around the clearing. Ed camped in, eyes wide. "Jesus, look at that snow." I glared at him. "Yup, a whole lot of snow. It looks like someone didn't check the weather forecast." Earl blanched. "You shits never said I had to check the weather. I already packed all the food." "That was Chuck's job." I sneered. "No, the fuck it wasn't. Chuck doesn't have to." Earl cut me off. "Yeah, Chuck doesn't have to do anything on these trips. Ever. It's all up to me. I'm the only adult here." I huffed. "Shut up, Earl. You know why we do all the planning." Earl was practically screaming. No, I don't know why. It's been 3 years. Why isn't he just over it? I clenched my fists and fought off the urge to deck Earl then and there because his fucking wife died. You don't just move on from that, Earl Rep. Lead I would have moved on a long-ass time ago. I growled, that's because you are a callous piece of shit, Earl. We both turned our heads as the quiet but devastating sound of a zipper interrupted our conversation. Chuck poked his head out of his tent, tears welling in his eyes as he pleaded, can we leave? This isn't a fun trip. I don't want to be here anymore. My heart leapt to my throat, hurting as though I could feel it breaking. I rushed over to Chuck. I'm sorry. He cut me off sternly. The only reason we started going on this trip was to get my mind off her. That is the opposite of what you two are doing right now. I want to leave. I kept my mouth shut and nodded. If I spoke, I was only going to make things worse. After a long silence, I answered him. We'll pack up and leave right now. Earl glared at the both of us too. You do not see the snow. We aren't leaving this place any time soon. Not till it melts. Chuck was clearly about to lose his cool. Stop bullshitting me just because you want to stay and hunt after. Ruining the whole damn weekend doesn't mean you get to. I inspected our surroundings. The snow still piled up around us. I was reluctant to say it, but I had to. Chuck, I know you're upset, but Earl is right. We're snowed in. It's too dangerous to hike down the mountain in this condition. Chuck scowled and disappeared back into his tent with a loud zip. Earl grumbled, fuck you guys. I'm gonna go check out that frozen watch. Maybe then this trip won't be a complete waste of time. I followed after him, yelling, seriously, dude, you're still thinking about that stupid watch? When he reached the stream, he whipped out a pocket knife. He jabbed the ice aggressively over and over again. I watched as little hunks of ice flew through the air. A piece nearly hit me in the eye as I shouted, would you stop that? Earl jumped up from where he squatted, a finger pointed at the ground. See, I tall. Du, it was a Rolex. I'm rich. Suddenly, all the color drained from his face. I crept up closer to him as he failed to stammer out a sentence, fingers still shakily pointed at the stream. I gasped as the full picture came into view. There was indeed a Rolex, still attached to a human wrist. I shuddered. Earl, is that what I think it is? Earl turned to the side and vomited. He wiped his mouth. It's a fucking corpse, Jimmy. What else would it be? Panic had begun to rush through my brain. My thoughts became blurry and frantic. What do we do? Do we call the police? Earl had begun to laugh hysterically. How, Jimmy? We don't have any cell reception up here, and we're snowed in. With a deep breath, he squatted back down. Besides, I want that fucking Rolex. To my horror, Earl's hands were grasped around the corpse's wrist. He pried at the watch, and a sick crack rang amongst the trees. I screamed. Clasped in Earl's grip was a disembodied hand. He wedged the Washington Chi off the limb and brandished it before me with a smile. Think about how much money he can get from this. We aren't calling the police. It's not like anyone will ever find him up her. That watch will do us way more good than him. I remained still and ignored Earl's antics as I stared at the cadaver in horror. The body, if it could still be called that, was covered in long gashes and tears. It was less of a human and more of a mass of flayed flesh. My breath quickened. Forget the watch, Earl. What the fuck did this? Before Earl could answer, an ear-piercing screech sounded from our campsite. I straightened and ran toward the sound with a shout. Chuck, In the minute it had taken me to reach the site, all hell had broken loose. Our tents were torn to shreds. I searched desperately amongst the debris for Chuck. I could hear labored breathing and a whiny cry. I rushed to Chuck's tent, rifling through the ravaged detritus with no success. As I whipped my head about outside, a drop of snow landed on my nose. I wiped it off, only for my hand to come away a dark crimson red. I stared up. In the trees above me was Chuck. What remained of him, his body was still where, hissing, impaled through the middle on a tree branch. Guts hung outside his body, creating a gruesome tapestry of innards and gore. Despite the bile that rose in my throat, I didn't have time to grieve. Not yet. I shouted Earl. "Get your gun." From behind me, Earl strode into the campsite. He took in the disastrous scene. Completely missing Chuck's body, he questioned me, still more focused on the watch in his hand than anything around him. While I began to hunt through my own belongings to find my rifle, I aimed it around the field and waited. Whatever had killed the mystery man was still here. Whatever it was had killed Chuck. In the blink of an eye, whatever the monster might be was upon Earl. He had in fact not gotten his gun in time. Through my rifle scope, I witnessed what I knew would never be believed. A massive creature was in the process of tearing Earl limb from limb. It walked on 2 feet like a human, but towered far above the height of any man. Shaggy brown fur hung from its ape-like body, a horrid smell of carrion and body sweat rotting the air around us. With one of Earl's legs dangling from its mouth, its eyes met mine, and animalistic hatred seared through its vision, burning holes into me. Still covered in my friend's blood, it charged. I aimed and took the shot. My gun exploded with a bang, the echo, all racking my shaking body. The bullet hit the creature straight in the chest. It flinched, pausing for a moment to paw at the bloody hole. It looked from the bullet wound back to me, a sort of she-age in its expression. It wasn't more than a few seconds before it was resuming its stampede towards me. I had no choice. I ran. I couldn't save my friends. The only thing I had was my own hop, of survival. The thing's thundering footsteps sounded behind me, gaining on me fast. Without much time to consider my plan, I turned the corner round a tree and dove into a thick pile of snow. The creature lumbered past, still chasing a man who was no longer running. I held my breath for as long as I could, until the sounds of the creature were long gone. I stayed there until the cold around me had begun to burn. The frigid snow was beginning to feel so warm that I nearly let myself drift off to sleep, nearly let death take me. No, someone had to tell Earl's wife where he was. Someone had to tell Chuck's mother what had happened. It didn't matter if no one believed me. They had to know. With my last burst of strength, I fought my way out of the snowbank. It was late afternoon, snow beginning to drift through the sky once again. I wandered what I hoped was the Iron Creek Trail until my feet were numb, until my chapped hands and lips were bleeding. When the sun had set and all hope was gone, I saw my savior, the shining headlights of an oncoming car. I sprinted to the road, waving my hands at the sweet light rushing towards me. The light that did not stop rushing towards. The last thing I heard as the world around me went warm and black was the blaring sound of a car horn. Then silence. Story 7. The color of snow Ask me what the color of snow is. I'll tell you it's blood red. Always has been. I'm only 14. That shouldn't be my answer. The ground beneath my bare feet burns from ice. The white horizon stretches in every direction, hypnotic, like the lies we've been fed. Father, my voice is soft, innocent. The violence is still dormant. Why do you want me to be a killer? The man behind the white veil is level with my gaze, though I see no eyes. Silk cascades over his face. It spills from the wide-brimmed sun hat. A curtain that surrounds his head with honor. He wears the color of surrender, his suit. Crisp purity. No, fire burns beneath the clean shade. Greed and destruction are his fuel. He's trying to make me see, trying to mold me to his image. My fists are tight, a frozen rebellion resisting his. Flame we're called by our weaknesses, mine. Spotted skin spots to belittle me further, spots he lulls. The silk over his lips ripples softly. Our lineage is elite, blood and breath, worship and power. Our name stays eternal. He says it like God blessed us, holy malice. Taking my hands, he holds them meaningfully. His skin is pale perfection. The underside of his hands, slick obsidian, though they move like soft leather. They're hot. Mine are cold, but the warmth doesn't reach me only. Pressure from his grip speaks. You were born with a gift. Something divine lives inside of you. Something only a veil strider can carry. One you'll soon become, that predatory calm watch. Ask me, I don't need to see that his stare is unblinking. I can feel it. He hunts my eyes for the switch to make me submit. I stare back, defective. He's disappointed, I understand. My mind is empty. Nothing remains for him to take. I threw everything away the day my brother, Stutter, died. Mother, a half veil, had kept the lights on in my mind, only a flicker, but a soft amber that kept breath in my lungs. But when she was executed, a void as barren as my heart. When father replaced Stutter with black hair, one child for another, I sealed the iron rot that is my heart with a lock, and if he were to unlock it, he'd see his demise. But I don't want it unlocked. I don't want to be like him, like all the veil striders. Spots, he says, reaching for me, tell me you understand what you must do. Something beyond the skeletal trees breaks through the snow's glittering cross. The crisp sound spike. As my pulse along with his words, his thin hand slips under his vest, and he replaces the heat in my hands with cold metal. It bites into my palms like dry ice searing, my nerves dying beneath. It seamless chrome blends at every angle. The dagger's edge is surgical. It shines without flaw or purpose, but it's nothing but flaw. It's the very thin. Gee, that'll rob me of everything, ... An endless life of mistakes and pain. I want its weight out of my hands, but a train, thank you, nearly crosses my lips. I swallow it. I can smell the heat rise. Off of him a whisper of ammonia and burnt flesh. I quietly exhale it from my lungs. I glance at his absent face. His presence is almost camouflaged in the soon-to-be whiteout. There are other veil striders here too unseen, but watching. The air is starved of breath. You can hear the snowflakes fall to their death. I envy them. Father looks immaculate. I don't. I wear rags of the slain fabric that was stiff this morning. Now its rust stains absorb the moisture and bleed for a second time across my skin. He waits for my answer. Patience is a virtue of tea. Heirs even when faced with endless screaming and sobs for mercy. My catches a fat snowflake It would have caught on his shoulder if it could have, but it evaporates the instant it tries to touch him. They are untouchable, not by nature or by enemy, not even God. The flakes clump to me instead, slowly consuming my existence. My shivering is meaningless. I want tea. Oh, go back and sigh. But there isn't one not until I've accepted. Refusal feeds the white-hot. I want to refuse. But one thing threatens my resistance. The blade catches my dead stare. Rhyme has begun, creeping around the handle with each blink. Spider cracks weaken my morals. My eyes flick to his. I feel the shift, see the grin spread underneath the veil. Can I choose anybody? My words are too dark, like someone else spoke. Them, they were everything Mother taught me not to be. But what blooms beneath my skin? Electricity sparks my heart. I'm ready to become like him. He places his palm on my shoulder, practiced warmth. Then it happens, his veil begins to lift just a touch, enough to reveal a grin made of parchment and bone. It peels back my nerves. I've never seen the face of a veil strider. His joy is sick, and his smile as trustworthy as thin ice. Yes, you may choose anyone. Approval makes the foreign object in my hands feel safe. I straighten, locking in my decision. The corner of his mouth curls, eager to swallow my words. I want black hair. My voice is solid, certain. His smile retracts. No, he killed stutter. He exhales through a new smile. It should heat the air, it doesn't. Spots, he says the name of his favorite daughter slowly. He made a mistake. Black hair has proven himself as worthy. As an asset, I challenge the demon before me. It was no mistake, I whisper. The veil rises further. The shake in my limbs isn't from the snow. We never see their eyes, never. Time fractures, the reveal is complete. Facial features as hard as marble, and his eyes. The shape is there, but the socket is packed with rows of blue-gray lash feathery bristles. When he blinks, it's soft. You can almost hear it brush. Our gaze holds. His smile is artificial. It was. He stays, he says, even and insistent, protecting his favorite son. I look at the dagger, this time with anger. My blonde hair crawls over its reflective surface. My blue eyes warped. My finger trails the edge of the blade. It effortlessly cuts. I feel nothing. I swallow and choose another victim. Him. He is no longer my father, but I know he is off limits. Or now, my cyclones, I hand back the weapon. Choose for me. His smile twitches, then it spreads. His teeth are human to human, skewed perfection. I admire your bravery. His tone is an anesthetic. It tries to numb me. I don't allow it. You will do well, I'm certain. I force a smile, despite my chattering teeth. Thank you, Corvath. The disrespect smudges his polished dot. He corrects me gently. It's father. Always I nod like a proper daughter. Lie like one. Two, he doesn't see the truth. Not yet. Father is a title I'll bury with stutter. I silently apologize to Mother. I am not proud of this. Their cult is built on blood and ruin. But ruin is a language I speak fluently now. Let him choose my first kill. Let him think I belong to him. I will learn their rituals, master their blades. Wear their veils, walk in perfect skin. They kill everything that crosses their path. But so will I. His veil restores itself, and he turns, silk dancing with the wind. I force my dead limbs to follow. Winter stole my warmth. He claimed my innocence, but I keep my truth and hold my secret. The snow will hold the blood of many, but one day it will learn his blood too.